History is not only about remembering the past, it is about understanding how it continues to shape the present and inspire the future. On this important national occasion, we are honoured to be joined by Kuwait historian Dr. Lujain Alfarhan, whose work has contributed to preserving Kuwait's historical memory and deepening our understanding of one of the most defining periods in our nation's history. Dr. Lujain, we welcome you here in our studio.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
Dr. Lujain, now today marks the anniversary of the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. Now, why does this day still hold a lot to the Kuwaitis?
You know, every single second of August of every single year, I can literally feel the sorrow and deepness of this day. And even looking at the coverage that you had earlier, as usual, chills all over, tearing up because what happened was unexpected. And because of that, it is a wonderful day to remember two things. To remember that peace should not be taken for granted, and a day to remember all of those who had endured the occupation and remember prisoners of war, and hopefully one day have closure to when they're back, because some families are still waiting. Some areas are even still waiting. In almost every single area and neighborhood here in Kuwait, usually at roundabouts, at clinics, supermarkets, there's always those plaques about those who gave their life and body and soul to Kuwait and its liberation. Some neighbors are still waiting for their neighbors to come back. Some people still have hope that their parents will come back, and so on and so forth and what have you. So it's a national memory and it's not taken for granted.
And so you still see it means something in depth for the Kuwaitis until this day, after like tens of years?
Of course, because in the end, what happened was traumatic, and trauma can be passed down, and people continuously hear stories about family members, or even through the media. I remember growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, up until 04, 05, even with the Ministry of Information's programs, they always had to bring up the Iraqi invasion and liberation, and those who sacrificed their lives. So of course it's something core to the Kuwaiti identity, if not GCC identity, because in the end GCC countries opened their doors to us automatically. We're siblings, we are one family, so it's a shared memory that's passed on from generation upon generation.
And what about those generations who did not, let's say, witness the invasion that happened, the Iraqi invasion to Kuwait? What is the important lesson that they should learn?
I think the important lesson is how can we help the younger generation? Because some people underestimate them, and that honestly, I may be biased because I taught for 15 years. And I remember year upon year with different generations, and you know how they are, from Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Gen Beta. I've noticed that with the younger generation, they really are keen to learn more about what happened. For example, let's say usually during February, around National Liberation Day and celebrations for the whole month, I would always have students who are old enough to even be my children, to be honest, ask, what do you remember? What do you recall? Now, and I would tell them I wasn't alive during the invasion or liberation. I was born literally a month right before the liberation. So I know post-war Kuwait and how that affected us. During the war, no, I've heard some stories from family members, from neighbors, from friends even, and their families. But I would always notice those students would have two things: sparkling eyes and a sorrowful heart. They want to know more, and in fact, some students have even said, I wish I could go back and sacrifice my life for Kuwait. So don't underestimate them. They already know the core values, they just need someone to listen to them.
And how did this invasion shape the Kuwaiti national identity and the resilience as well?
I always say, and I'm getting chills just saying this, a nation is built by its people before its buildings. And what great asset we had back then was unity. And with unity comes courageousness, resilience, and bravery. People did not think about other people's names or backgrounds or where they're from. As long as you had the core idea to liberate Kuwait, no matter what, that was what was essential, because with unity comes strength. And mashallah, you know how the Kuwaiti people are in terms of prosperity and hardships. They're always there. First line, ready to sacrifice and do whatever is needed to reach their goal. And our goal back then was liberation and to not erase our identity. And they did that successfully.
And so you're saying national unity did help greatly in overcoming the occupation?
Of course, because when you look at old literature from back then, because you remember, because from 91 till 93 and ongoing, of course, lots of literature were made back then, usually pamphlets, because we're talking about pre-social media. Of course, the Ministry of Information did wonderful coverages, but lots of literature was published during that time. And you would see the people of different age groups from 14 and above contributing. Those who were elderly also contributed. It was like, as long as you're on this land and you want to liberate it and you want to affirm your identity, you're more than welcome. No questions asked, and the goal was accomplished, actually.
And now, beyond restoring Kuwait's sovereignty, what did the liberation mean for the, let's say, country and its people?
I do believe that two assets came out. The first was rebuilding life post-liberation, because those who were alive during the occupation saw pre-war Kuwait, and they saw Kuwait during the war, and then, I don't like saying post-war, I prefer saying post-liberation. It was new terrain for them to rebuild their identity, rebuild their homes, not take security for granted, and trying to teach things to the younger generation. I really did notice by hearing that. And to reaffirm that our identity will never be erased, because what happened was extremely gruesome, malicious, vindictive. Did you know that the international coalition that came to liberate Kuwait, all those tens of nations, were larger than those during World War II? So imagine, World War II was just 45 years prior to the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. The countries that came and contributed were greater than those during World War II. So that says something. Not to mention the deliberate destruction of land, of flora and fauna, destroying all oil wells, and the abuse that people endured, be it psychological, mental, emotional, because what had happened, which was unfortunately deliberate, caused two things. Number one, something called Gulf War syndrome, a medical term for what happened during the occupation and what had happened, plus the barbaric forms of abuse were so gruesome that they were called criminal wars, and consequences that were really destructive of the century.
And so it's very important as well for you that you're saying that people should stick to the term post-liberation, not post-war.
Yeah, because thankfully we were liberated, and with liberation came different things. It was new terrain, new land, a new and stronger reaffirmation of our identity. So post-liberation is even used in other literatures with other wars and occupations and genocides. And Kuwait did get liberated, and you can even see in old clips how people were thrilled with the liberation. They, again, in times of prosperity and hardships, we are ready. And we did not take our peace for granted, because peace is worth protecting.
Well, thank you for these clarifications and answers. We'll take a short break and we will be back with you, Dr. Lujain. Now we have a report about Kuwaitis that formed one of the most remarkable civilian resistance movements in the region's modern history, proving that the strength of a nation lies not only in its armed forces, but also in the determination of its people. Here's more. Returning now to the studio, let's talk more on further discussions and insights with Dr. Lujain here in the studio. Dr. Lujain, so we're back, and would like to know also more about the invasion and how did it influence the way Kuwait preserves and teaches its modern history.
The thing is, war leaves more than just destruction. It leaves behind grief and memories. And honestly, the Kuwaiti government has done a wonderful job with preserving our history in different outlets as a free nation. I believe that there are three top outlets. One is through eyewitness accounts and storytelling. I'm pretty sure in almost every single house in Kuwait, be it special occasions or during family gatherings, people do bring up their grief and memories and their longing. Secondly, social media. There are amazing accounts out there by people who weren't even alive during the occupation. For example, you have Kuwait War 1990, a very famous account specialized only in material from the occupation and post-liberation. And also my colleague in the field, Jasim Dakhshud, has a wonderful account preserving history. And last but not least, this is my personal favorite, museums. I love all the museums here in Kuwait. I've been to almost all of them. There are around 27 or 33 museums here in Kuwait, by the way, counting those who are temporarily closed. My favorite museum, especially for the young generation or even our generation or older, is the Al Salam Museum Palace. It was actually one of Sheikh Saad's, God rest his soul's, palace. And it's filled with amazing history from pre-Hellenistic times. Of course, that's not my scope of specialty. And modern history. They have a wonderful segment and a wonderful staff, I send my regards to them, all about what happened during the invasion. There's even a 20-minute segment with audio and video explaining things so deeply, you've got to cry. It makes me cry every single time, to be honest, because it's just so emotional, especially as a war baby and someone who is attached to Kuwait, just like its citizens, of course. So those three outlets are outstanding. And it's for everyone. If you're not into stories, you've got social media. If you're not into social media, you have fantastic state-of-the-art museums. So it's your choice in the end.
So that museum is one of the museums that you'd advise citizens to also go.
Of course.
And everyone.
Yeah, and it's right next to the Sheikh Jaber Cultural Center, so it's pretty close by. And it's wonderful. The staff is fully Kuwaiti. They're dedicated to sharing history, helping others, assisting others, and it, again, state-of-the-art and done by the government, so I absolutely love it, to be honest.
And in that regards, are there any stories that you'd like to share that you think every Kuwaiti should know?
Yes, actually, a few do come to mind, but again, my colleague in the field, Jasim Dakhshud, posted a wonderful video that gave me personally closure. I'm sure you remember one of the most famous images of Kuwaitis who were tortured during, I'm just getting chills right now remembering, who was tortured during the occupation just because of his love for Kuwait. And he endured trauma to his lower jaw. You could even see that it was highly traumatized. And I always wondered, what happened to him? What about the other people who are famous and their images are all over literature, media, what have you? And I always used to wonder, what happened to him? Is he okay? What's going on? Until my colleague posted a video, a recent video of him, reconstructed lower jaw, talking about what he endured and what he wishes the younger generation would know and much more. And that man's name is Dr. Uthman al-Asfour. I was wondering, I was like, finally, me personally, I have some closure as to what's happened to one of the brave people who sacrificed for this nation. And I wish everyone else could have closure to their loved ones and missing ones, because I actually have a student who learned about his uncle and what had happened to him and got his remains in 2022. It was just 4 years back. And it just gives me hope that we can know what's happened to those who sacrificed their lives and did all of what they did, so we can be free today and protect our peace at all costs.
And there's such saddening stories,
Yeah, of course.
to be honest. Yeah. And what about the international community? If you were talking about international community's role earlier and how they helped about Kuwait's liberation, could you tell us more about that and why it's important still today?
Of course it's important because it just shows that Kuwait, from the moment Kuwait was Kuwait, that we have strong diplomatic ties. We care about our alliances, we care about helping others, we care about being a democratic nation that values diplomacy and alliances. Because it's easy to talk the talk and walk the walk, but what Kuwait has done is actually build bridges, bringing all parties to the table, building a bridge. And the second point is, it just shows how great we are as mediators in times of negotiations and in assisting others. Dialogue is never a weakness. Mediation is always a strength. So yes, of course we have that. And those two values, our national values, do bring great assistance in times where we can help ourselves and help others.
And now, speaking of the role of the international community and the stories you've shared now, the newer generations, and you've been closer to them as you've taught them as well. So how do you think they would look at this, and how would they, from which perspective they would look at it?
All I can say is Imam Ali, peace be upon him, has a saying from his 31st letter in Nahj al-Balagha. A young child's mind is like an uncultivated garden. Whatever it grows, it accepts. So whatever we give to them, they will give it to us back tenfold. And those young minds, they really do care, because I've seen them. I've seen young men, young women of all ages. They really are connected. It's like, as I said earlier in our interview, it's a trauma that happened. And trauma does go down generation upon generation. So I'm sure they've heard stories from a very young age and maybe even imagine what they could have done back then. Or, God forbid, because our peace is valuable in the future. So they are ready. They just need someone to listen to them and give them a chance. That's all.
Do you think those newer generations can feel the same sorrow that Kuwaitis have felt?
Thing is, of course, those who are around feel it differently than those who are born post-war. Yeah, for sure. But here's a funny thing about lived experiences. The brain doesn't differentiate between something that's in your mind versus what actually happened. So if they could put themselves in their shoes, of course they would feel it to an extent. Because those who had endured what had happened, because the abuse was so grotesque, malicious, barbaric, dare I say. Again, it was known as one of the worst war crimes of the century, the Iraqi invasion and the abuse that was endured and inflicted deliberately. So of course, those who were alive back then who had received severe abuse, probably to this day, have blocked it out. For example, people take trauma and what had happened differently. We could have the same trauma, you and I, but I would react differently than you. Same thing with siblings in a shared environment. They have the same parents, they have the same upbringing, but they turn out differently. So what I'm saying is, be it those who had endured the occupation and those who put themselves in their shoes, they could feel something, but of course with different levels and extents.
Yeah, that's clear. Well, that was, elaborative, Dr. Lujain. We'll be back after this report and to continue further insights from your side. Now, we will have another report about the beginning of another historic challenge. From damaged infrastructure to environmental devastation, the road to recovery demanded determination, unity and a long-term vision that would shape Kuwait for generations to come. Now we return to the studio, and before we wrap up, we have some discussions with our guest right here in the studio, Dr. Lujain. Dr. Lujain, so we were speaking about the experiences of the Kuwaitis pre-war and post-liberation, as you have stated and given us elaborative answers on that. Now, what responsibilities from your perspectives do schools, media, families have in preserving the memory of the invasion?
I'd like to talk about the responsibilities and then how the global media played a role.
Okay.
As a responsibility, I do believe every single person on this planet inherits two things, a homeland and a responsibility. And it is your responsibility to respect the homeland, know your values and pass down those national values, and each country is unique in their own way. And
the global media, did it play a huge role at the time, or maybe post-liberation at least?
Again, during the war and even post-liberation up until 1998.
I think radio was active at the time.
Yeah, for sure, but the thing is, media, for example, Hollywood and their productions of films and even cartoons affected on a global scale to let everyone know about the occupation. For example, there are many famous films such as Three Brothers, or what's it called? Live from Baghdad, which was produced in 1999, talking strictly about the occupation. The Manchurian Candidate came out in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken, 2002, 03, again talking about Gulf War syndrome. And there was another film, I honestly don't remember its name. I think it was called Three Kings, talking in detail about the Iraqi invasion. But Live from Baghdad, I would recommend that, to be honest.
What's the importance of these movies?
They're trying
How do you see it?
I saw it as a way to show more than one aspect. In the end, Hollywood is American. They're shedding light upon the American troops that assisted in our liberation and George H.W. Bush, talking about the Kuwaitis, because I do believe many people on a global scale know about the Emirates. They know about, because of Dubai, for example. People know about Qatar because of the World Cup. They know Kuwait from the Iraqi invasion and the occupation that had happened. And just like World War II, because there are so many similar parallels. During World War II, cartoons kept producing time and time again about what was happening to let children be educated. Same thing happened, but they focused on Saddam Hussein, and they gave him even nicknames, even in the media, such as So Darn Insane or Saddam Insane, showing how tyrannical he was and how he was at the time a horrific dictator. So the media played a role to share their story, shed light on the matter, and put Kuwait on the map in some way.
So that helps even shaping even the non-Kuwaitis' minds, for example, from the American sides, whether the viewers of the movies themselves.
Yeah, because in the end, who doesn't watch movies and who isn't into films or whatnot, except for a small group of people? So with the media, especially in the 90s, it was pretty elaborate. It was almost like they wanted to cement what happened and make sure that everyone knows what had happened, the atrocities that had happened.
Well, that's clear. Also, we'd like to take the opportunity to ask you about your experience. We've never got the chance to ask you about that. Your experience being born post-liberation, you have said a month, let's say. How did you get to know, when did you start getting to know about, let's say, the invasion? How did you start learning these things? How has your experience been and developing?
My experience is one because it just kept going one after the other.
Because when you speak to me, it seems like you've lived through the invasion. It always seems like that. Yeah,
for example, my uncle, late uncle, he passed of pancreatic cancer back in March 2001. He played a role in the liberation as well because he was part of the temporary government in Saudi Arabia with Sheikh Jabir, God rest their souls. So I do remember stories from my mother as well, family members, because I remember when I was young and seeing photos of when I was just a few months old and seeing different images with my parents and what they were wearing back then. And I was always a curious child, hence me being a historian at the moment. I remember stories being shared about what happened outside of Kuwait, during Kuwait. And we had a family member, my stepfather, who stayed during Kuwait and during the occupation. He still says to this day, and he still has flashbacks, by the way, and still has dreams about what happened.
Still until this day?
To this day, yes, even though it's 35 years post-liberation. I still remember him saying that when he was positioned next to the Kuwait Towers, he wanted to pass through the streets. And he said, I was trying to say the Shahada, but I couldn't. I was just so flabbergasted and could see the bullets passing in slow motion. That tells you about how people back then viewed things. And personally, growing up, because most of my classmates were war babies like myself, so we had many classmates who had lost a mother or a father, mostly fathers, who were either martyrs or prisoners of war, and them sharing their stories. I even remember going through, back in 2001, 2002, we had a school trip to one of the museums, Kay La Nensa, Lest We Forget Museum. I believe it's still functioning to this day. It's very nice, actually. It actually has shrapnel and remains from the war itself in the museum on display. Back to the point. We had a classmate who, when she saw her father, who was a martyr, she just,
At the time?
Yeah,
she was at the trip.
We were probably about 10 or 11 at the time, and seeing your father, who has passed as a martyr, is a very deep sensation. I remember she was crying the whole time, and I didn't blame her. We all couldn't blame her because we all knew one another. We all knew such students had a parent who was a POW or a martyr, or having family members with those experiences. And I do say, even though I gave quick examples of my own experience, I do believe every single Kuwaiti in one way or another has their own experience, their own stories, and their own memories. For example, to this day, when I read, I love to read. When I see old literature and read it, be it Arabic or English, or see clips from the past, for example, did you know that there was a special song post-liberation called Ahlan Baba Bush? Hello, Baba Bush. Baba being the term for a father, and seeing Bush as a father figure since he assisted in our liberation, in addition to other nations. Mm-hmm. Such media, to this day, brings chills down my spine because it's something that's lived. It's something we all understand. It's something we all share. So, yeah.
So the sorrow that I see that you are living, does it all come from the experience that you have, let's say, lived and seen? So the interest that you have in, let's say, in knowing other people's stories, and the interest that you have in the history of the war itself and other things, does it come from your experience, do you think? Or is it purely just because you were a curious child, as you said?
I do believe, though I just don't think this. I believe it's maybe an interest, something that piqued my interest, and I am an emotional person. I am a sensitive person. I do have empathy. So when I remember growing up, seeing buildings that still have bullets in them, even in the area I live at the moment, there are still some old houses that haven't changed post-liberation.
Still, until this day?
Yeah, in the block I live in, there are 2 houses, and those neighbors said, we want to keep our houses as they are. We don't want to change a thing. We accept what happened. We are grateful for our liberation. We're keeping the homes as they are. Mm-hmm. So me personally, I do believe that I have such an attachment to my country, and I just really love Kuwait. And I accept what has happened and what will happen. So that deep attachment fuels my sorrow, you could say, and interest. Whenever I see old clips, I still cry as if I had lived it.
And you linked it to your teachings as well?
Yes, for
right?
sure, yes, of course.
You did. Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Lujain, are there any messages you'd like to leave with our viewers on the anniversary of Kuwait's liberation or resilience, or you want to leave on this, about this day, tragic day?
What I want to say is, never take anything for granted. Peace should never be taken for granted. And as long as you have an attachment to this country, do as you can, do as you will, and free Kuwait. And for more information, if anyone's interested, they can follow me on Instagram at History Addiction.
Well, Kuwaiti historian Dr. Lujain Alfarhan, we thank you for your time here and elaborative answers, and for sharing your experience as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. As we conclude the first part of today's special program, we once again thank our guest, Kuwaiti historian Dr. Lujain Alfarhan, for reflecting on the lasting lessons of the Iraqi invasion. History reminds us that peace and stability would never be taken for granted. While today's Middle East is facing very difficult challenges, the region is once again navigating a period of heightened tension where security, diplomacy and global trade have become closely interconnected. In the second and final part of today's program, we turn our attention to the latest regional development, beginning with the 2 of the world's most strategically important waterways, the Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Here's more details.